And with that, I think we're going to go ahead and dive right in. We're going to dive right into the video, and we're going to start with the CH27 teardown. And as soon as I find it here, there it is. And here we go. This is what I would like to point out. We have, this is a CH27, and this is Lemania, the 1861 right next to it. You could see a lot of similarities. You could see a lot of differences. What I like about the CH27 better is it has a Breguet overcoil. It's a much more refined movement than the 1861 is. Not that the 1861 is a bad move by any stretch of the imagination. You also see a couple things here. We have the column wheel. This is a column wheel chronograph, and this has the cam. And we will get back into that too at a later date. This is going to be down the line. We have there's different systems, different operating systems. So we will see that. We will explore it. We will discuss it, the differences, because a lot of people have interest in that. So we're just we're doing a little comparison right here. We want to see the differences in these movements. This one actually, this 1861 is actually the calendar version with the moon phase. So it has a couple extra pieces up on top. And other than that, the top side, the dial side is almost identical. And here we go. We're going to go ahead and start the teardown. And this is, to me, this is beautiful. This watch has been pre-cleaned. It's my estimation the watch has probably been serviced one time. This is a 50-year-old timepiece. And for something to be in this good a condition, I was actually shocked when I came out of the pre-cleaner and it just lit up the way it did. It's absolutely a beautiful watch. There are a couple of screws in there that I'm going to go ahead and refinish at a later point. It's just going to be it's going to be a lot of fun going through and dissecting this watch over the next few segments, few weeks. We're taking the chronograph bridge off here, and again, everything I'm doing here, yes, there's no finger cots on. We don't need them because the watch is going to be washed again, and it was today. Again, this is the chronograph bridge. This is what holds down both your minute recorder and, if I can stop for a second, this is your chronograph wheel right here, your seconds hand that's in the center, and this right here is your minute recorder. There we are. That's our minute recorder right there on the top, just outside of the, just on the stem. What we have here, this is our fourth wheel, and this is what drives the chronograph. And this works on almost all the chronographs that are not vertical clutch work off the fourth wheel. The Zenith El Primero works the same way. They all do the same thing. And they're all driven the same way. We're going to get into a very specific way to pull that. It's not high tech. It's the way they've been doing it for the last 75 years. So I'm just, I'm just going through, making all my checks on this watch as I take it apart to see what kind of repairs are going to have to be made. I'm making a mental note of some of them, of some of the finishes that I'm going to want to do, because this has a beautiful brushed finish. It has polished edges. This is a nicer finished watch. So we're just doing a little teardown here, and I'm trying my best to keep my hands out of the way. We actually went through a different camera angle on this one, and I think it turned out really good, though. We actually came from the front side of the bench on this, so I'm hoping everything. This right here, this is our hammer. This is the hammer for both the chronograph runner, and let's back up just a second here. When you hit your reset on your chronograph, this piece comes slamming down, and this one right here engages your chronograph hand, and this one engages your minute recorder. And what those do, they come down and they hit, and that's what sets everything back to zero. The hands don't care where they are. You put the hands where everything is set. Everything has to be at zero. You put the hands on there, and then you're fine. There are adjustments that can be made to this hammer. This hammer can be lengthened. It can be shortened. It's lengthened actually by hammering it, and you actually draw the metal out. Then you have to reshape everything because you have to have them both set at the same place. One other thing I'm going to point out on this is this little hook right here, coming right here. There is a pin in the CH27 and also in the 1861. It holds it back. When you actually start your chronograph, it comes back and a pin comes up and engages and just holds that back. When you go ahead and hit your reset, if you can hit the reset, depending on the position of the column wheel or your cam, it'll slide that pin out of the way and your hammer drops. It's a very clean system. The hammer's spring powered. It's just a very sharp, definitive reset on this. So I'm just doing a little examination of it. I'm deciding do I want to refinish this or not? Do I need to put a new brush finish on it? I'm checking the surfaces. I'm checking for any kind of rust, anything on this. This is the chronograph wheel. And the chronograph wheel has a couple important features on it. And let's see if we can get into them right here. There's one of them right there. This is the heart. And when I talked about the hammer coming down, the hammer will actually come down and it'll impact it right on this side, and it's going to slam it back to 0. That's all we have to do. It goes back to 0. The minute recorder has the exact same one, which is right here. And it's just good. All they do is they hit, they send it back to 0, and we're good to go. On the bottom side of this is the finger that actually trips your minute jump. Making sure everything's in good shape, making sure everything's where it's supposed to be. You'll notice one other thing too. The power is not let down on this watch, on this movement. There's a reason for that. It's because you cannot get to the click spring as of yet. The click spring is actually buried underneath a bunch of levers. It's buried underneath the switch that turns on the hour recorder, which is on the dial side, and it's all power from the dial side, which we'll actually get into as well when we get further into this watch. I'm making further checks. I'm checking integrity of the screws. This is the tension. Checking for the tension on the sweep pinion. If you don't have correct tension on there, when you start your chronograph, your hand's going to actually chatter. We don't want the hand to chatter. They have to be smooth. This one runs at 18,000. It's going to be a little steppier, but we never want to see that hand drop. And we don't want to see it drop because coming up the other side, it's going to be good. But if it's dropping going down, it's gravity. And we have to kind of fight that gravity by having a spring underneath. And as I said, I go back a lot of times and I'll readjust my screwdrivers depending on the screws. Just because the screwdriver is the right width does not mean it's going to fit the same screw. So I'm going a little narrower, just trimming things down, and I do this all day when I'm working on the watches. And we are actually taking apart the brake, another very important part in the chronograph. When you stop your chronograph, you have a chronograph running, you go to stop it, and then you have to make sure that hand doesn't slide. It has to lock everything in place where it is. This right here is the brake. And that is what actually stops your chronograph. And what it does, it actually comes in contact right there. It's a little spring tension in the back, that little tail. It comes in and actually rests up against the side of your chronograph wheel. And that's what actually stops the chronograph and just lets it. So when it re-engages, this actually pulls out of the way. And we're going to do a little comparison here real quick. And I have the two movements side by side. This is actually the plastic one here is actually the brake on the 1861, I'm sorry. And that's actually the brake. It's the same parts. Geometry is way different though. And so I just like to show some of the comparisons when I can actually pull them up. It's nice having both movements on the bench at the same time right in front of me. It's not too often you get a 321 and you actually get to tear down. And that's why I like to document as much as I can, and be able to show people. This is an interesting thing right here. This screw right here. I hope everyone can see that. There are a couple lines across the top of that screw, and when I pull it out, I'm actually going to try to make, try to show it better. There's 3 lines across the top of that screw. Instead of the 1 line down the middle, there's 3 lines. Anytime you see 3 lines, that's a reverse thread screw. And the reason it's reverse thread is because it's going to have tension going clockwise. If it weren't reverse thread, when you'd operate that chronograph on and off with the springs, it would actually loosen that screw. So what this is made to do, because the force is actually a clockwise force, it's going to keep it tight because it's reverse thread. And the biggest mistake you can make is trying to take a reverse thread screw off the same way you take a normal screw off. That just doesn't work. You're going to break it right off. The screw will just snap. So we're going to go ahead and adjust everything. Check the screwdrivers. A lot of times I'll use a screwdriver that's actually wider than the screw itself because I'd rather be wider than narrower because I just do not want to scratch the sides of that screw. And you can see me actually turning anti-clockwise here, and I'm taking this screw out. It's a reverse thread screw. It's the only one on the movement. There are a couple little idiosyncrasies in this movement that I'm going to show later when we're going back together about adjusting eccentrics, adjusting the cams. It's just a lot to this movement. And we're going to do a little comparison again. This is the switch that actually transmits the power, or the on and off to the hour recorder, which all is on the top of the dial, or underneath the dial. All the hour recorder parts run off the barrel on this watch, not unlike a 7750, but it is a little different than a 7750, which I'm going to go in depth on that as well in this segment.